Imagine a young girl walking miles through muddy fields, carrying a torn satchel and a quiet dream. She had no shoes, no power, and no spotlight, only determination and a spark in her eyes. That girl would one day walk through the grand gates of Rashtrapati Bhavan, as India's first tribal woman president. This is not just a story of success. This is the journey of Droupadi Murmu, a woman who rose from the heart of India's forests to the heart of its constitution. The first cry echoed through the mango trees, carried on the wind like a whisper from the earth itself. It was June 20, 1958, in the humble Santhal village of Uparbada, deep in the Mayurbanj district of Odisha. The monsoon clouds had gathered over the sal and mahua trees, and the red earth smelled of rain and promise. In a modest thatched hut made of mud walls and cow dung paste, a baby girl was born, small, brown-skinned, her fingers curled tightly as if grasping invisible threads of fate. Her parents, Birunchi Narayan Tudu and his wife, were both from the Santhal tribal community, simple people with strong backs and stronger spirits. Her father, once a farmer and later a small village official under the panchayat, was a quiet man who believed in education, though it was a rare treasure in those parts. Her mother's eyes held the calm of a river in drought, resilient, unmoving. They named her Droupadi, after the mythic queen of the Mahabharata. But no one in the village imagined that this child, born into a world of dust and struggle, would one day sit in the grand white corridors of Rashtrapati Bhavan, the highest seat of power in India. She grew up in a world where the forests were sacred and the sky was a constant companion. The village was small, no more than a few dozen families. Most were illiterate. Some lived in bamboo huts, others in mud houses with roofs patched by tin sheets and leaves. Droupadi's early days were simple, fetching water from the well, helping her mother grind rice, chasing hens barefoot through the dust. She wore hand-stitched frocks passed down from older cousins. Food was often scarce, but never love. Her family, like most in the village, survived on seasonal crops, paddy, maize, and forest produce like tamarind and mahua flowers. At night, elders told stories of the ancestors who fought British soldiers in the jungles, of spirits who guarded trees, and of the Santhal rebellion that once shook an empire. Those tales sank into Droupadi's bones, not as legends, but as lessons. She began to understand that her people were never weak, just unseen. One rainy morning, as she sat under a neem tree, her father handed her a small slate and said, "Padhiba Shikha, learn to read. The forest gives us life, but knowledge will give us wings." That was the first time Droupadi touched education. She didn't know the alphabet yet, but she liked how the chalk felt in her fingers, like she was writing her own future. In a place where girls were not expected to dream, I learned to dream anyway. Quietly. Fiercely. She would walk kilometers barefoot to reach her school, crossing dusty roads, muddy fields, and sometimes even streams during the monsoons. Her satchel was a faded cotton bag with a single notebook and one pencil. Teachers were few and irregular, but one, Master Mishra, saw her spark. "You think more than you speak, Droupadi," he once said. "That's the sign of a leader, not a follower." At home, she helped raise her younger siblings. The family had little money, but they had music. On festival nights, the village drums beat loud and wild, and Droupadi would dance with the other children, her anklets jingling like laughter in the dark. But even as a child, she felt something stir within, a longing. Not for wealth or escape, but for dignity. For recognition. For a world where girls like her didn't have to wait for permission to rise. I was not born to riches or titles. I was born to a people who taught me how to live with less and give more. That is where true strength begins. The town of Bhubaneswar was like another planet compared to Uparbada. The buildings rose higher than trees. The roads were paved, the people wore shoes, and the language felt sharper, more polished, almost foreign. When Droupadi stepped into Rama Devi Women's College, a small part of her still carried the forest inside her, a silence, a humility, a sense of belonging to the earth rather than cement. But she had come here for more than a degree. She had come here for a voice. I knew I was not the smartest in the room. But I also knew that I would never quit the room until I had learned everything I could. Life in the college hostel was not easy. She had barely enough money for her fees, let alone new clothes or books. But she studied under the light of borrowed lamps, ate sparsely, and walked everywhere with quiet dignity. Her teachers noticed her not for her brilliance, but for her persistence, that stubborn kind of discipline that outlasts talent. She graduated with a BA in arts, a rare feat for a tribal girl at the time. After college, she took up work as a junior assistant in the irrigation department, and soon after, as a school teacher in Rajasthan. There, she returned to the soil, not as a daughter of the village, but as an educator, someone who could now open doors for others. Every time I taught a child how to write their name, I felt like I was rewriting a part of our history, one that did not erase us, but finally included us. Her students adored her. They said she smiled with her eyes. She understood their hunger, their silence, their broken shoes, and their fragile dreams. She married Rashtrapati Murmu, a kind, soft-spoken banker who believed in her strength. Together they built a small, happy home filled with love, children, and the sound of tribal lullabies. They had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. Droupadi balanced motherhood with teaching and social work. The mornings were for school, the evenings were for her family. Sundays were for community meetings where she spoke to women about sanitation, education, and dignity. But fate is not always kind to the kind-hearted. First, her younger son died in a tragic accident. Then, within a few years, her elder son also passed away. Not long after, her husband died of a cardiac arrest, leaving her completely alone. 3 deaths. 3 cracks in her soul. There were nights when I wanted the sky to fall. I wanted the forest to take me back. But something in me whispered, not yet. You are not finished. She sank into depression. But in that darkness, she found light through the Brahma Kumaris. They did not preach to her. They sat with her in silence. And in that silence, she began to rebuild herself, layer by layer, breath by breath. I could not erase the pain. But I could choose what I became because of it. In 1997, she joined the Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, becoming a councillor, then an MLA, and later a minister in Odisha's government. I was not here to be seen. I was here to do the work no one else wanted to touch. She remained rooted in her tribal identity, wearing it with pride, and advocating fiercely for education and dignity for her people. As an MLA and minister, Droupadi took on the roles of transport, commerce, and fisheries with quiet competence. She focused on real needs, roads, livestock, women's self-help groups. She earned respect. In 2015, she became the first tribal woman governor of Jharkhand. She stood her ground against laws she felt violated tribal land rights. She visited remote areas, invited school children to Raj Bhavan, and governed with compassion. Governance is not about chairs and speeches. It is about listening before deciding. In July 2022, India heard her name announced as the NDA's presidential candidate. From forest trails to parliament, her journey shocked, moved, and inspired. On July 25, 2022, Droupadi Murmu became the 15th President of India. This is not my victory alone. This is the victory of every poor child who sleeps under a leaky roof. This is the echo of every grandmother who never stopped believing in dignity. She reminded India what democracy could be. Not just elections, but elevation. Not just power, but purpose. Today, she continues her quiet revolution from the grand halls of Rashtrapati Bhavan, but she still walks as if she carries the forest with her. She still meditates. Still writes. Still listens. Behind the security gates, beyond the red carpets, beats the heart of a woman who once fetched water in an earthen pot, who buried her sons with her own hands, who read her textbooks by lantern light, and who now signs into law the destiny of 1 billion people. If my story can make even one girl believe in herself, then my life has been worth every tear, every step, every silence I endured. Droupadi Murmu is not just a president. She is a promise. A promise that no matter how distant your roots, how humble your beginnings, or how heavy your loss is. Your dreams are not unreachable. She rose not only for herself, but for every unseen child of the soil. Her life is living proof that even the quietest voices can echo through history. Her message to the nation. In her first address, she did not quote great philosophers. She spoke instead of teachers, mothers, and young girls. She urged India to remember its villages, its forests, and its original people. I was born in a tribal community, and I reached the post of President of India. This is the greatness of India's democracy. If this story helped you understand Droupadi Murmu's journey better, hit like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories.